Okay, so this is the assignment number 2, the problem number 1. So they ask, so this table is given, right? So the class A, the relative frequency is 0.22, right? And 0.18 and 0.25, right? And then on purpose, as you can see, on purpose, a D is empty. So the question is, what is the relative frequency of the D? So any volunteer? How can you? Okay, by the way, I look at the Mind tab, and about half of our students, about 50%, I think 40 or 50% of students already completed this assignment. So half of you already completed this assignment. So I'm sorry for those who already completed this assignment. And my lecture is going to be a little bit boring, but anyway, I'm going to finish this. I'm going to solve this problem, right, with you guys. But okay, so how can you find the relative frequency? Any volunteer? You can speak up.
I'm sorry.
Hello, I cannot hear you. So any volunteer? Okay, so you know that the relative frequency is 0.22, right, for the class A, and you know that this is like, basically you have to add this up, right? So relative frequency is like 0.22 means like what? Basically 22%, right? The class A is basically 22%, like that's the frequency, and that's for the class A. And the class B is 0.18, which is 18%, and 0.25, that's for C, and D is question mark, right? But we add all of this, right? Then the sum of all this has to be what? 1, right? So if we put this as X, then basically 0.22 plus 0.18 plus 0.25 plus X should be 1, right? So you can easily find the X. And if the total sample size is 700, what is the frequency of the class D? Right? So that's easy, because if the sample size is 700, right? And then class D is, let's say this is, by the way, this is an example. What is it now? But let's see, what is the answer? This is what? If you add this up, then it's above, this is 0.0, right? Yep. And then you add this up, this is like 0.65. So X in this case, 0.35, right? Okay, so if X is 0.35, and then if the total sample is 700, right? The about 35% of 700 should be the relative frequencies for the class D, right? So the 700 multiplied by 135, or this is basically 0.35, right? So you can get the answer. So that's the part B, right? And then show the, okay. Okay, now the what? So show the frequency of distribution for the class A, right? I think this problem is a little bit of an issue, but assuming that the sample size of 700, they ask you to find the actual number of frequencies, right? Not the relative frequency. So to find that the actual frequency is for the class A, right? Assuming that we have a 700, and what is 22%, right? Right? Then you can get the actual frequency. Okay. And then you can get the percent frequency, right? So this is like, if it's 0.22 means like a 22%. So the problem 1 is really easy, right? So any question about the problem number 1? Okay. Now let's go to the problem number 2. So problem number 2 is really about histogram, right? So the owner of the automobile repair shop studied the waiting times for the customers who arrive at the shop for an oil change. The following data with the waiting times in minutes were collected over a 1-month period. Okay, so for example, the 3 means the 3 minutes, like, right? This is like waiting time, right? 3 minutes, etc. So we have this data. And then you know that we have a class, and class also is known as bin, right? So how many bins or how many classes we have? 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 5, right? So there are a couple of things you can do, right? So basically, this data set is not really large, right? It's relatively small. So find the class, right? From 0 to 4, you can count, right? You know that 3 is belong to this class, right? Because it's less than 4. So we have 1, and then we have 2, and then 3, 4, right? So basically the frequency is 4. I mean, that's something you can do, right? But we can use the we can use the Excel, right? Excel spreadsheet. So I mean, that's one way. So you can count all this, right, based on this class, right? Or maybe, okay, maybe, I mean, also the another option is we can use the what? You can use Excel spreadsheet. So we can just copy and what? Okay, we can copy and we can paste. Oops, I think it's the hold on. I think there is no paste option. Hold on. Yeah, so there is a match the destination formatting, okay? So if you click this instead of a source formatting, so match destination formatting, so you have this number, right? And what? We can use the frequency, right? So I think in chapter 2 you learn about the frequency, right? So by the way, this is the content. Oops, okay, not this one. Okay, I mean, if you go to the Mind tab, right? If you go to the Mind tab, there is a video tape and video tutorial on, like, I'll show you later, but there's a video tutorial on the how to create the histogram, right? So I asked you to watch that video tutorial, and I think last week or maybe 2 weeks ago, right? I assume that everyone watched that video tutorial, right? How to calculate the bin range and how to create a histogram using the Excel spreadsheet. So that video tutorial is on the Mind tab, right? So if you look at that video tutorial, they use the function called a frequency, right? So you can use a frequency, right? And then they say data array and then bin array, right? So the first one is a data array. So this is a data array, right? A1 to D5 and comma. And then bin array, we have to create the bin array. Oops, you know what? Let's just first create the bin array. Or maybe, okay, yeah. Let's just undo. You know what? Let's just create the bin array. So bin array is from 0 to 4, 5 to 9. So the upper limit for the first bin is 4, right? And then second is 9 and 14, right? So what we can do is first let's just put this bin array in here. So the 4 and then 9, right? And then the next one is 14. The next one is 19, right? 19. And then the last one is 24, right? So that's like a bin array, right? So now I can use the frequency formula. So my data set is this, right? And this is my bin array, right? Okay, here is that we are not only looking for the frequency for the first bin, right? Basically, we are looking for a frequency for at least 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 bins. So that's why you have to use, if you just hit enter at this point, it will give you the frequency for the first bin. But that's not what we want, right? So we have to, instead of enter, we have to say Control Shift Enter at the same time, right? So I just put the Control Shift Enter, right? Then it shows that okay, so basically for the frequency, right? So since you have multiple bins, right? So when you have a frequency functions, right? And then blah blah blah, and then you have to use what? Control and then Shift and Enter, right? You have to press this 3 things together, right? To get the multiple frequencies, or the frequencies for each bins, right? Multiple values. Actually, you know what? We use also this for what? The mode, right? When you try to calculate the mode, in case there is a multiple mode, right? When you use mode functions, and I think mode for multi, right? We also use this. We have to press the keyboard, right, buttons at the same time. So remember the frequencies, and then when we try to find a multiple mode. If there's a single mode, then we don't have to. But when the data set is really large, we don't know whether it's going to be multiple mode or a single mode, right? Okay. So let's see. Okay, so that's the answer, right? So for the first bin, I have a 5, right? So I have a 5. And then for the second bin, I have a 6, etc., right? Okay. So another thing is, so that's a frequency, right? So you can find the relative frequency. Basically, relative frequency is the frequency divided by total, right? So that's a relative frequency. So that's something you can easily find. And then for the cumulative frequency is, for example, you have to add up, right? So let's just write one more example. So that's a 4, right? So next one is 4. Okay. So to find the cumulative frequency, the first bin is obviously a 5. But since a name indicates cumulative, when you put the value, right, for the second bin, you have to add first and the second, right? 6 plus 5, because we have to add them up, right? So it's a cumulative. So 6 plus 5 is equal to 11, right? And then for the third one, you have to add everything up to the third bin. So 5 plus 6 plus 4, which is 15. Right? So etc. Right? And then cumulative relative frequency is, it's the same thing. You have to find the fraction. Right? So you add this m up, and then to find the fractions, for example, the 5 divided by total. Right? So you have to find the fractions. Right? That's a relative. So the answer could be like 0.25, 0.15, etc. Okay? So any question up to this point?
I have a question.
Yes.
On the part A,
Part
on
A.
the frequency
Yes.
part,
Yes.
where it says total,
Uh-huh.
what would we put in the total section?
The total?
Yeah.
What do you think?
So when I did it in Excel, it says 0, but I feel like that's...
No, it's not 0.
Okay, so it's wrong.
The 0 means anything above 24, the frequency is a 0.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So then what do you think? What do you think you have to, what value? How can you find the total?
You add them all together?
Yeah. Add everything, and then you can get the total, right?
Okay.
Okay, and then another question. In the Excel, which function do you're gonna use to, let's say, I know that you can calculate this by hands, or like you can use a calculator, of course. But in Excel, what is the functions?
Sum?
Sum. Great, thank you. So you can use a sum. Equal to sum, right? And then this. Okay?
I have a question.
Yes?
At the bottom where it says cumulative relative frequency,
Mm-hmm.
if you go down, so for the total, let me
Where?
think.
B, C, D, which one?
Oh, D.
D, okay.
So for that, we're going to, hold on, let me think. I think I'm confusing it. There's no total on it.
Yeah, so you have to find the total. From C, you have to find the total, and then you can find the cumulative relative frequency.
For C, you mean we add up, like for where it says 15 to 19? We
Yes.
add up the first three.
No, not the first three. You have to calculate everything, right? You have to fill out the all the empty slot, right? Once you find all the empty slot, then you can you can find the total, right? So first you have to finish everything.
Okay, but I'm saying to find that empty slot, you do have to add up every new line.
No. Then you have to look at the frequency here. So you have to fill. So you have to first finish A, B, and then C and D. Okay, so you can basically. I mean, this example that I went through during my lecture explains, like for example, how to compute the cumulative relative frequency. So cumulative relative frequency can be computed, right? Either by summarizing the relative frequencies in the relative frequency distribution, right? Or by dividing the cumulative frequencies by the total number of items. So using the latter approach, we found the cumulative relative frequency in column 3 of table 2 by dividing the cumulative frequencies column 2 by total number of items, right? So in this case, we know that the total number is 20, right? So that's a total number. You're adding all the frequencies, and then the 20 with the cumulative frequencies in the last bin is 20, right? So that means there are 20 items. Okay, so you can get the cumulative frequency, for example, right, 0.20, right? by like 4 divided by 20, right? You can get a 0.20, right? And then you can get the 0.6 by this cumulative frequency divided by 20, right? For example, like 12 divided by 20 is, let's see, it's a 10.6, right? Okay, so that's like 0.60, right? Okay, so that's how you can get the this cumulative frequency, 12, right, divided by the total number of items. In this case is 20, right? Okay, so if you think about it, the number in the last bin is like, that's the sum, right? The sum of all the frequencies. Okay, so 12 divided by 20, you can get 0.60, for example. Okay. Okay, so I'm done.